My name is Robert. I live in Washington, D.C. area. My story is a little unique than most of my colleagues that I meet that also have psoriasis or psoriatic arthritis. I have psoriatic arthritis and was diagnosed in the early 1990s before it was a thing, before people really were that aware of it. I had some trouble walking and I had some aches and pains in my feet and my ankles. And I went to a doctor. I was living in New York at the time, and he examined me and said, "You have psoriatic arthritis." And of course, I didn't know what it was, but when he started to explain it, I didn't even know what psoriasis was. I had not even been diagnosed ever as having psoriasis. And once he explained it to me and gave me the medications that were available at the time, I started to take those, and they helped me, but they couldn't do enough. He explained to me that there were other drugs on the horizon that were going to be coming out soon, those biologics, and eventually they could help me. So fortunately, I would say, it took about maybe 10 years or so, but I began taking biologics with the doctor once I moved down to the DC area. And they really did start to work, and they started to help me out in the early days. And it evolved, and I've seen not only the particular drug that I was on evolve, but I've seen other drugs come into the market. I've changed my prescription maybe only twice in those years, and it's been helping me tremendously. I've never had a lot of psoriasis on my skin, but I always had a lot of joint and pain and discomfort, and those things have been taken care of pretty much for the most part. In fact, I just saw my rheumatologist, who I've been seeing now for 25 years. He's a wonderful guy here in Northern Virginia, and he was amazed by just how nimble I was. Some of the things that he predicted 20 years ago would maybe take a different turn, really sort of all away. And I would say the medicine and the research have proven themselves out. When I was first diagnosed, I didn't know where to turn. I mean, I was a young kid living in Manhattan, and had a lot of discomfort, a lot of pain in my ankles and my feet. I had trouble walking, but I didn't even know what a rheumatologist was or what kind of a doctor could possibly help me with my troubles. And somebody recommended I go to a special physician, a special surgeon, or someone at the time. And I conferred with this rheumatologist. And fortunately, he was a young enough guy that knew the current medications and diagnoses and what was going on with modern day medicine, that he immediately looked at me and said psoriatic arthritis. Whereas a lot of other doctors at that time may have not necessarily put two and two together because they weren't maybe fresh out of school and had freshly read some of the newest research and medical exams. So it was it was a journey from there, and it took some time, but things started to improve, and some troubles that I had with my joints and some disfiguration I had to my fingers even had actually improved themselves and straightened up a little bit. And like I said, it's really sort of taken me to where I am right now. My current challenges are primarily just the joint pain, but I look at it not just because I've gotten older over the years, but also because, um, arthritis is arthritis. Maybe I have psoriatic arthritis, but there are plenty of people walking around these days with other arthritic conditions. So I recognize that sometimes it's going to be a little harder to screw something into the wall, to hold something very tiny in my hands, or cut something. I recognize the pain, at least I'm aware of it, and I make adjustments based on what I have to deal with. But pretty much that's the biggest troubles that I have these days, fortunately. I think I was first introduced to IDEOM through the National Psoriasis Foundation. I've always been very active and involved with that foundation. I think they do wonderful work. I've watched them evolve as well. And they introduced me to IDEOM probably for their second or third meeting, which was being held close to the Washington, D.C. area. So I went there. I really was not as aware of what they were all about and what they were doing, but I was committed to sort of helping the disease and the evolution and research of the disease. And I met with the people and started to see this small group evolve. And now, I don't know how many years later, I've seen IDEOM open up to other diseases, other skin conditions, other researchers, people from other countries come to visit and participate in the programs. And I've not just been impressed, but I've also seen everything evolve to where you really feel like you're making an impact with the input you're providing as a patient advocate. I think the highlights and the highlights that will still come are actually sitting in a doctor's office and seeing or being asked questions that I know were a result of the work that we've done as patient advocates. I mean, I've I've seen the process. I've been through some of the sessions where we've all sort of struggled for the right wording, for the right replies. I've enjoyed the fact that researchers are including the patients and have brought us into the process, but I've seen now the outcomes of them, and if I get to actually see them in the questions that I'm asked in my doctor's office, I think that's going to ultimately be the pinnacle. First of all, IDEOM was founded with great vision, and I give Dr. Gottlieb tremendous kudos for all that she's been able to accomplish and what her vision was for this organization. I would say that um, I want to be able to continue to contribute as much as I can as a patient advocate. From day one, Dr. Gottlieb was very adamant about making sure patients were at the table with the researchers when they were making decisions and they were talking about these things, and also the pharmaceutical and the drug companies. And I've participated just like everybody else as best as we can, and our input has been welcome. So I think I just would like to see it expanded upon as needed. Um, she always talked about bringing more diseases to the fold, and I think increasing that and improving that for patients, for researchers all over, I think is really the best goals that I can hope for, not just myself, but for IDEOM itself.